Mumbai has a building so massive that one family lives inside what looks like a 60-story skyscraper. It has snow rooms, 3 helipads, and a parking garage that fits 168 cars. But the land it sits on used to belong to orphans. The Phantom Island made real. There's a building in the city of Mumbai that should not be possible. It rises up from the ground like a giant block of stone dropped from the sky. It looks more like something a king from a storybook would build than a real home where a real family eats breakfast every morning. But it is real, and just one family lives inside it. Only one. The building is called Antilia. The name comes from an old legend about a ghost island that was said to float somewhere in the Atlantic Ocean. Sailors from hundreds of years ago whispered about this island. They said it was a paradise that no one could ever find. A phantom, a dream, a place that existed only in the mind. So when the richest man in all of Asia decided to build himself a home, he picked the name of that ghost island. He took something that was supposed to be only a story, and he turned it into stone and steel and glass right in the middle of one of the busiest cities on Earth. Antilia stands 27 stories tall, but here is where things get strange. Each floor inside this building has ceilings that stretch up so high you could fit 2 normal floors inside just one of them. So, even though the building has 27 floors on paper, it is actually as tall as a regular 60-story skyscraper. The top of the tower sits about 173 meters above the ground. That is more than 568 feet. That is taller than most office towers in any major city you can think of. And remember, this is one home for one family, not a hotel, not a hospital, not an office, a home. The man who owns this building is named Mukesh Ambani. He is the boss of a company called Reliance Industries. That company is the most valuable business in all of India. It sells oil, it sells phone service, it sells groceries, it sells almost everything you can imagine. And Mukesh Ambani himself is the richest man in all of Asia. Some reports say his home cost $1 billion to build. Other reports say it cost $2 billion. Today, the value of the building has grown so much that some experts believe it is now worth more than $4.5 billion. That is more money than the value of entire small countries. But before we go inside, you need to know how this place came to be, because the story of how Antilia was born is just as wild as the building itself. And it starts with a fight over a piece of land that used to belong to orphan children. The year was 2002. A company called Antilia Commercial Private Limited bought a piece of land in Mumbai. The land was about 4,500 square meters. That is roughly the size of a city block. They paid 210 million rupees for it. Back then, that was about $2.2 million in American money. For a piece of land in the middle of Mumbai, that price was very low. Very, very low. And that low price would later cause a lot of trouble. Why? Because the land used to be the home of an orphanage called the Kurimboy Ibrahim Koja Yatimkhana. That orphanage had been there since the year 1895. It was a place built to care for children who had no parents. The land was also tied to something called a waqf. A waqf is a special kind of religious gift in the Islamic tradition. Once land is given as a waqf, it is supposed to stay with the religious community forever. So when this land was sold to a private company to build a billionaire's house, people got angry. Very angry. Critics said the sale broke the rules of the Waqf Act. Lawyers filed complaints. The Waqf board itself raised objections. A public interest case was filed in court. A judge issued a stay order to stop everything. But then, somehow, the objections went away. The Waqf board pulled back its complaint. The stay order was lifted. Construction was allowed to move forward. The court case kept dragging on in the background like a shadow that would not leave. Even as late as 2018, some reports said a fresh public interest case was still being looked at. To this day, the deal over that piece of land remains one of the most talked about real estate stories in all of India. To understand why Mukesh Ambani wanted such a massive home, you have to go back to a sad moment in his family. His father, Dhirubhai Ambani, was the man who built the Reliance empire from almost nothing. Dhirubhai was a legend, a man who started small and built a giant. When he died, his 2 sons, Mukesh and Anil, had to figure out how to split the kingdom their father had left behind. They had a famous family feud over who would get what. In the end, they split the company in two. Mukesh got the oil and gas side. Anil got the telecom and finance side. And from that moment on, Mukesh wanted to build something that showed the whole world how big his side of the family had become. Before Antilia, the Ambani family lived in a much more normal building. It was called Sea Wind. It sat in a part of Mumbai called Kolaba. By the standards of regular people, Sea Wind was huge and fancy, but by the standards of what Mukesh Ambani was about to build, it was tiny, like comparing a regular bicycle to a private jet. Construction on Antilia began in 2006. The Brihan Mumbai Municipal Corporation had already given its approval back in 2003. The team behind the build was a who's who of global design. The main architects came from a famous Chicago firm called Perkins & Will. The interiors were handled by a Los Angeles firm called Hirsch Bedner Associates. The early construction work was led by an Australian company called Leighton Holdings. Later, an Indian construction giant named B.E. Villamoria and company took over to finish the job. And the engineering brains who solved the hardest puzzles came from a Mumbai firm called Sterling Engineering. We will hear a lot more about them in Part 2. The building was finally finished in 2010. A grand housewarming party was held in November of that year. You would think the family would have moved in right away, but they did not. Something held them back, something old and powerful that no architect could fix with steel beams or concrete walls. The family worried that the building had bad energy. They follow an ancient Indian science called Vastu. Vastu is the belief that the way a building is laid out can bring good or bad luck to the people who live in it. The Ambanis felt that something was off about Antilia. So, in June of 2011, nearly 50 pandits were brought in to perform special rituals inside the building. These pandits chanted, lit fires, sprinkled water, and prayed for days. Their job was to chase away any bad spirits or bad energy that might be hiding in the walls. Only after those rituals were finished did the family finally move in. That was in September of 2011. Almost a full year after the building was technically ready. Mukesh, his wife Nita, and their 3 children, Akash, Isha, and Anant, made the move together. Sometimes the family matriarch, Mukesh's mother Kokilaban, stays there too. So between 5 and 7 people, in a building so big it could hold a small town. But how do you even build a tower this strange? A tower where every single floor looks different from the one above it. A tower with hanging gardens that pour down the outside walls like a green waterfall. A tower with 3 helicopter landing pads on the roof. A tower with mega columns that split into 4 like the legs of some giant concrete spider. To pull that off, the engineers had to do things that had almost never been done before. They had to fight the wind, the earth, and the very laws of physics. And what they did next would change the way the world thinks about home building forever. The engineering beast. If you stand on the street and look up at Antilia, you might think you are looking at a building, but really, you are looking at a giant science experiment. Every floor, every column, every beam, every piece of glass, every inch of steel and concrete had to be planned with the kind of care that goes into building a rocket ship, because Antilia is not just a home. Antilia is a problem that engineers had to solve. The first big problem was the Earth itself. Mumbai sits in what experts call seismic zone 3. That means the ground in Mumbai can shake during an earthquake, but the shaking is usually not too crazy. Indian building rules say homes in Mumbai must be able to handle that level of shaking. That should have been enough, but the Ambani family wanted more. They wanted way, way more. So, the team threw out the normal rulebook. Instead of designing the building for Seismic Zone 3, they designed it for the much tougher Seismic Zone 4. That means the building was made strong enough to handle the kind of shaking you would expect in a place much closer to a fault line. In simple words, they made Antilia ready for a magnitude 8 earthquake. That kind of quake is the type that flattens entire cities, the kind that knocks down bridges and turns concrete into dust. Mumbai has never had a quake like that in modern memory. The Ambanis wanted Antilia to survive one anyway. The engineering project started with one design idea. The first plan called for a steel skeleton. A British firm called Arup came up with that early plan. Steel is strong, light, and fast to put together. It seemed like the perfect choice, but there was a problem. Big steel beams are heavy and hard to ship. Welding them together on a busy Mumbai construction site turned out to be tricky. The kind of butt welding needed for the design was not reliable enough, so the whole plan was thrown out and started over. Sterling Engineering Consultancy Services from Mumbai stepped in and switched the entire structure to reinforced cement concrete, which engineers call RCC for short. Here is the wild part. Even though they changed the material from steel to concrete, they kept the sizes of the columns and beams almost the same. That is like swapping the bones of a giant from metal to stone, but making sure the giant still looks exactly the same on the outside. The dramatic open spaces, the column-free ballroom, the sweeping cantilevers, all of it had to survive the switch. And it did. Now let us talk about the foundation, because everything sits on the foundation. If the foundation fails, everything fails. The team dug down about 9 meters below the ground. They kept digging until they hit something hard, very, very hard. The bedrock of Mumbai itself. Then they poured concrete on top of that rock. Not just a normal layer of concrete, a 3-meter thick slab of reinforced concrete called a raft. Think about that. A slab as thick as a person is tall. That raft sits right on top of solid rock, so Antillia is basically glued to the planet itself. When the Earth shakes, the rock and the raft shake together as one piece. The building rides the wave instead of fighting against it. Once the foundation was in place, the engineers had to figure out how to hold up a tower with the floors that were all different shapes. No two floors of Antillia look the same. Some floors have wide open spaces. Some floors have gardens hanging off the sides. Some floors have heavy machines for cooling and heating. Some floors have nothing but cars. This is a nightmare for an engineer, because each different floor pushes and pulls on the building in different ways. To solve that, the team built something called an eccentric service core. That just means they pushed all the elevators, all the stairs, all the electrical shafts, all the water pipes, all of it, into one big spine on the eastern side of the building. That spine holds 9 high-speed elevators and 2 full staircases. It runs from the basement all the way to the roof. Thick concrete shear walls inside that spine soak up most of the force from earthquakes and wind. But here is the genius part. Because all that weight was on one side of the building, the engineers knew the tower would naturally lean a little bit to the west. So they did something almost magical. They built the spine tilted slightly to the east on purpose, like leaning into a wave before it hits. As the building got heavier and heavier during construction, gravity slowly pulled it back into a straight line. By the time the last floor was poured, the entire tower stood almost perfectly straight up. That is the kind of trick that only happens when engineers think 10 steps ahead. The next puzzle was the open spaces. The ballroom in the basement is 44 meters long and 13.5 meters wide. The ceiling stretches up 10.5 meters. That is a massive open room with no columns in the middle to block the view. How do you support all that weight without putting columns right in the middle of the dance floor? The answer was to push the columns back toward the core. Then, above the main garden level around 44 meters up, each main column splits into 4 smaller circular columns. Each of those 4 columns is 1.6 meters across. They taper as they go up. From a distance, they look like the legs of an upside-down pyramid. That free section of the building stretches up about 22 meters with nothing but those 4 tapering legs holding it up. The engineers used custom-made steel molds, called shutters, in 2 half-circle pieces to pour the concrete just right. They left the support frames in place until the slabs above had completely hardened. Otherwise, the whole thing could have collapsed during construction. Then there are the cantilevers. A cantilever is a part of a building that sticks out into thin air with nothing under it to hold it up, like a diving board. Antillia has cantilevers that stretch 9 meters out from the main body of the building. 9 meters is about the length of a city bus. During construction, the team built temporary braces under those cantilevers to hold them up until the concrete cured. Once everything was set, the braces came down and the cantilevers held themselves up like magic. There was one more thing to worry about: the wind. Mumbai sits right next to the Arabian Sea. The wind that blows in off the ocean can be strong, especially during monsoon season. Tall buildings sway in the wind. that is normal. But if they sway too much, the people inside start to feel sick and dizzy. So the team sent a model of Antilia to a special lab in London called BMT Fluid Mechanics. There, they put the model inside a giant wind tunnel and blasted it with all kinds of wind. The first results showed that the top of Antilia would sway a bit too much for comfort. The standard limit around the world is about 15 milli-G of acceleration. But Mukesh Ambani did not want to feel any sway at all. So the team kept tweaking the design until they pushed the sway down to between 8 and 10 milli-G. They did this by making the whole building stiffer, more steel rebar, more concrete, more structural strength baked into every joint and column. The bonus side effect was that this extra stiffness also helped the building handle earthquakes even better than before. 2 birds, 1 giant concrete stone. Engineers also added something called a response reduction factor of 2. In normal building design, that number is usually 3. A lower number means the design has to handle more force without bending. It means the building relies on raw strength instead of flexible bending to survive a quake. For a private home where the owner wants the strongest possible safety net, that was the only choice. Other tall buildings around the world use clever tricks like base isolators or giant swinging weights at the top called tuned mass dampers. Antilia does not need any of those. Antilia is just thick. Antilia is just strong. Antilia is built like a vault. So now you have a building that can survive a magnitude 8 earthquake. A building bolted to the bedrock of the planet. A building with a tilted spine that straightened itself as it grew. A building with columns that split into 4 like the roots of a tree. A building that barely moves in the wind. A building that no one can knock down. But all of that engineering only matters if what is inside is worth protecting. And what is inside Antilia is the part of the story that nobody outside the family has fully seen. The part where snow falls indoors. The part where chandeliers weigh as much as elephants. The part where 4,000 pieces of bread are made fresh every single day. And the part where India's most famous billionaire became a target of scandals that shook the entire nation. Inside, the palace of snow and secrets. Step inside Antilia, and the first thing you notice is that the rules of the outside world do not apply anymore. Time moves differently. Heat works differently. Even the seasons themselves bend to the will of the owner, because somewhere on one of the floors high above Mumbai, there is a room where snow falls from the walls. Real, cold, white snow. In a city where the temperature outside often climbs past 100 degrees Fahrenheit. That room is called the snow room. The walls themselves spit out tiny artificial snowflakes that drift down through the air like flakes from a winter sky. The family can walk in, feel the chill, watch the snow fall, and pretend for a moment that they are in the mountains of Switzerland instead of in a tropical Indian metropolis. It is one of the most talked about features of the entire building, and it is just one room out of hundreds. Let us start the tour from the bottom. The basement holds the utilities, water tanks, pumps, telecom systems, big electrical substations that quietly hum day and night. Above that sits the grand ballroom, 44 meters long, 13.5 meters wide, 10.5 meters tall. The kind of room where you could play a full game of indoor cricket and still have space left over. Inside that ballroom hang massive crystal chandeliers. Some of them weigh up to 25 tons each. 25 tons. That is heavier than 5 fully grown elephants. The engineers had to build special steel platforms above the ceiling just to hold those chandeliers up safely. The room has hosted weddings, political meetings, business deals, and family parties. Most famously, parts of the pre-wedding events for Anand Ambani's 2024 wedding played out under those very chandeliers. Above the ballroom sits the parking garage. But this is not a normal garage. It is 6 full floors tall. It can hold 168 cars. 168. In a single private home. The family fleet reportedly includes Bentleys, Rolls-Royces, Mercedes-Maybachs, Ferraris, Lamborghinis, Teslas, and many more. A dedicated car service station sits on one of the upper floors of the garage. So, if a tire goes flat or an engine needs a tune-up, the mechanics come to the car instead of the other way around. Higher up sits a mechanical floor. Then a 50-seat private movie theater. That is right, a private cinema with 50 plush seats. big enough to host all the friends and family for a movie night and still have empty rows. Higher still are the garden levels. These are the famous hanging gardens. Inspired by the ancient hanging gardens of Babylon, they cascade down the side of the building like green waterfalls. They serve more than just beauty. The plants cool the building naturally and clean the air. In humid, polluted Mumbai, that is no small thing. Then come the health floors. 2 full floors of swimming pools, spas, salons, gyms, and yoga and dance studios. Olympic-sized pools so the family can swim laps. Spa rooms for massages and beauty treatments. Studios for yoga, which Mukesh Ambani is famously devoted to. Above the health floors are 2 guest suite floors. These are designed for visiting heads of state, celebrities, and important business partners. Then come the primary family residence floors. These start above 109 meters in the air. The top 6 floors of the whole building are reserved just for the immediate Ambani family. Reports mention there could be as many as 49 bedrooms across the building. At the very top sits an observatory and a library, around 141 meters above the street. And finally, on the roof, 3 full-sized helicopter landing pads. Although getting full official permission to actually land helicopters there has been a long fight with Indian regulators. Sprinkled throughout the building are smaller touches that show just how detailed the design is. There is a private temple where the family performs daily prayers and major Hindu festivals. There is an ice cream parlor for casual treats. There are multiple, smaller swimming pools beyond the Olympic ones. There are dance studios, libraries, and reading rooms. Mukesh Ambani personally led the design of the interiors. She worked with the team at Hirsch Bedner Associates to make sure no 2 floors look the same. Each one has its own color palette. Each one has its own theme. But 2 symbols repeat everywhere: the lotus flower, which stands for purity in Hindu tradition, and the sun, which stands for energy and life. You will find these motifs carved into marble, set in crystal, and inlaid in mother of pearl across nearly every level. To run a building this big, you need a small army, and that is exactly what the Ambanis have. Reports estimate around 600 full-time staff members work at Antilia. 600 security guards, housekeepers, cooks, gardeners, engineers, technicians, drivers. Many of them live on the property in housing that has been described as feeling more like a luxury hotel than a staff quarters. Their salaries are said to range from 1.5 to 2 lakh rupees per month, with benefits that include insurance and even education support for their children. The scale of daily operations is hard to picture. Reports claim around 4,000 rotis, which are Indian flatbreads, are prepared inside Antilia every single day. Whether that exact number is accurate or simply legend, the fact that anyone seriously claims it tells you something about the scale of the place. The family is strictly vegetarian. They follow Gujarati and Hindu food traditions, so the kitchens are vegetarian operations on an industrial scale. The bills to keep this place running are eye-watering. Around 2010, monthly electricity use was reported at 637,000 units, costing roughly 70 lakh rupees per month. That is the same amount of electricity used by about 7,000 average middle-class Indian homes combined. Yearly maintenance is estimated at around 30 crore rupees. That is just to keep the lights on, the pools clean, the gardens green, and the snow falling. But for all its beauty, Antilia has not lived a quiet life. Controversy has followed it since the moment the first stone was laid. The land deal we talked about in Part 1 has never fully gone away. The Waqf objections, the orphanage history, the low purchase price, all of it still simmers under the surface of Indian public life. Even the legendary Indian industrialist Ratan Tata once spoke out about Antilia. He suggested that building such extreme wealth right in the middle of so much poverty showed a lack of empathy. He warned that this kind of in-your-face wealth could one day spark anger and unrest in society. His comments lit up newspapers and television talk shows for weeks. Then came the security scares. In 2017, a fire broke out inside Antilia. Thankfully, it was put out quickly and no one was seriously hurt. But the fact that a fire could happen inside what was supposed to be the safest private home on Earth made headlines around the world. The bigger scare came in 2021. A car was found parked near Antilia. Inside that car were explosives. A handwritten note was found that threatened the Ambani family. The investigation that followed turned into one of the biggest political scandals in modern Indian history. It pulled in members of the Mumbai police force, including senior officers. The case rocked the entire state of Maharashtra. To this day, parts of that investigation continue to play out in courts and the media. For all the criticism, there are plenty of people who see Antilia as something to celebrate. To them, it is a symbol of how far India has come since opening up its economy in the 1990s. It is proof that an Indian family can build something the world has to look up at, literally and figuratively. The engineering inside Antilia has been studied by architects from every corner of the globe. The way it handles earthquakes, wind, and irregular floor plans has become a textbook case for designers of luxury high-rises. Mukesh Ambani has not slowed down. Reliance Industries keeps expanding into new areas: retail, telecom, where the Geo network has changed how millions of Indians get online, green energy. Each new venture only adds to the family fortune. Antilia stands as the personal monument to all of that ambition. In a city like Mumbai, where space is so precious that families squeeze into tiny apartments and millions live in slums just blocks away, Antilia is something most people will never even glimpse from the inside. It is a vertical kingdom in a horizontal city, a phantom island that became real, a house with snow rooms and helipads and 25-ton chandeliers and 3 helipads on the roof. A house that took the legend of an island that never existed and turned it into the most expensive private home of the 21st century. Whether you see Antilia as a marvel of human achievement or a monument to inequality probably depends on where you are standing when you look up at it. But one thing is impossible to deny. There has never been a private home quite like it, and there may never be one again. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed watching this video, click on one of the boxes playing on your screen to watch more similar content.